Hello, and thanks for joining me today here on the set for this edition of Woman to Woman. I am your host, Anntricia Bray Smith, your professional mentor and speaker. It is indeed a pleasure to greet you here on the platform today as we continue in season 4 talking about relationships. Today, I'm going to give you 7 tips that you can use to create better relationships. And remember, when I am sitting here and I'm talking about relationships, these are just not our intimate relationships. These are relationships and tips that you can use in every capacity of your life. That means in your business, on your jobs, in your communities. These are things that you can use. And these are the relationships that we're talking about. Remember, we form relationships in every dynamic of our lives. Every time we meet somebody, every time we see somebody, every time we greet somebody walking past them in the grocery store or on the street, we are forming relationships. And so today, I just want to share with you 7 tips that you can use to create better relationships. So go ahead and make sure you have something that you can take some notes or download this segment so that you can go back and re-listen again over and over again to really gather and apply the principles that I'm talking about here today in this segment. So there's so many more that we can use, but I've narrowed it down to 7, and it is a good place to start when creating better relationships. Let's face it, I know that many of us throughout 2020 and 2021, the things that just has transpired in our nation and in our lives, many of our relationships in all capacities have been impacted, and most of it has not been in a positive manner. Many of us, our relationships have been impacted negatively, and along with that, we carry on the emotional baggage that comes along with our natural response to undesirable stimulus. So it's a good idea that we sit down and have this conversation today in hopes that you are empowered and that you receive the tools that you need to go back and give those relationships another look and another opportunity and another chance to thrive in a way that it's not only fulfilling for you, but fulfilling for all parties involved. So number 1, with that being said, number 1 is to consider yourself. Consider yourself within the dynamics of that relationship. Have you really done all that you can do? Have you really given all that you can give? And are you really being fair in your perception toward that relationship? I'll give you an example. I get up Monday through Friday and I travel an hour one way to a job that I used to love, that I used to give my 110% to every day that I show up. However, here lately, over the course of the months and things just continuing to pile on, not only on the job, but in every other areas of my life, I now arrive and maybe I am only giving 30%. And maybe my attitude is really negative. And maybe I say things that I shouldn't say. That impacts the relationship on my job. Because for one, if I consider myself I have to think, are things as really bad as they seem? Or am I making it much larger than it really is? What happens instead of giving 30% if I give 50%? What then? Am I going to have a 50% greater positive perception toward the job? Am I going to give myself a 50% chance at making this work? A better chance at making it work? Am I going to give 50% better attitude toward the duties and the responsibilities that I have? And so this is something to think about. When we are in relationships, we must consider ourselves first. Evaluate ourselves, assess ourselves to be sure. Because if we're not giving 100%, then we're only going to get in return what we're giving out. So the more that I'm able to give my job, the more value that I add to my job, and even our marriages or our relationship with our children, the more we're able to give of ourselves, the more we consider ourselves, the greater we will have in return on the other side. Like that old biblical saying, whatever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. So if you're reaping 30% and you're expecting 100% harvest, it just doesn't work that way. So if you reap, you sow 30%, then you're probably going to reap 30% or less. So let's be mindful of considering ourselves within the dynamics of our relationships. That's number one. Number two, give yourself grace. And this is something that I find is so difficult to do. Even for me, I have found it challenging to give myself grace in the relationships. Everything doesn't have to be perfect all the time. I'm not going to get things right all the time, and neither are you. And so we have to give ourselves grace to make those mistakes, or give ourselves grace to that we're not always going to be 100%. We're not always going to feel 100%. We're not always going to be emotionally connected 100% of the time. And so you have to learn to give yourself grace in whatever challenges that you're facing. You know, I can sit here and I can think just TV shows, so to speak, how when you see things, the relationships, and someone is saying something to another person that maybe they shouldn't have said. And then they just beat themselves up behind it because now I've said this and it's said and it can't be corrected. Well, sometimes we as humans, we're going to say things that aren't always the kindest things to say. Yet we have to give ourselves grace to make those mistakes, knowing that it's okay and that we can make it right. And as long as we have breath in our body, it's not too late. It's not too late to go back to that husband or that wife or that girlfriend or that child or that teacher or that community leader and say, I messed up. I said some hurtful things. I said some harmful things, and it had nothing at all to do with the situation. Please forgive me. I was going through a terrible time. Please forgive me. I had so much compiling up on me. Please forgive me. All you have to do is give yourself grace, grace that we're not perfect. And it's not the first time we messed up. It won't be the last time. But as we continue to get up and press through the day, we will get better. We will grow and we will develop through whatever it is that we're dealing with. And so learn to give yourself grace. So number one, consider yourself. Number two, give yourself grace. And number three, you have to talk about the hard truths. And this is something that many of us, we would love to avoid. And what do I mean when I'm talking about the hard truths? I'm talking about the good, bad, and the ugly within the relationships. Those things that nag us, those things that have hurt us, those things that, you know, the elephant in the room, so to speak. Many of us, we think that if we just avoid it and bury it and suppress it, that it would go away. But actually, in return, what that does is it begins to root up bitterness and anger and insecurity and jealousy and all those things that are harmful to relationships. So you must be willing to communicate and talk about the hard truths, no matter how contradicting it is, no matter how difficult or complicated it is. The hard truths must be talked about. And let's face it, nobody wants to feel like they're being ridiculed or feel like they're being condemned about a thing. That's not what I'm talking about. We don't go and communicate with somebody in attack mode. We have to use wisdom. We have to go with a level of understanding and talk in a way that we're not accusing or making accusations toward the other parties. I can't go to my job and be accusing and be angry and bitter and expect that they're going to give me something that I desire in return. I can't expect that they're going to give me a raise. I don't expect that they're going to give me better working conditions. I don't expect that they're going to negotiate with me and meet my needs if I'm going with this bitter, angry demeanor. And that's no different in any other of our relationships. We must be able to sit and talk with a level of respect, with honesty, with our feelings and our emotions out of the way. We must be able to sit down as adults, as respectful adults, as colleagues, as partners, as friends, be able to sit down and talk about the hard truths in an environment conducive to nurturing this relationship so that we can surpass and move past the current situations that we're in. So we must be willing to talk about the hard truths. We must be honest, not attacking, but saying, when you did this, I was hurt and this is what I need. When you said that, I didn't like it, so I reacted like this. Moving forward, let's come to the agreement that we will not, and you fill in those blanks and you're talking and you're communicating, you're addressing the situation for what it is without being accusing or without blaming or without making excuses or without being angry and bitter in the process. So you must be willing to have that conversation. Talk about the hard truths. Number 4, eliminate the distractions. Many of us, we can't focus on our relationships in the manner that we really hope because there's too many distractions around. Take me for an example. I am forever in my house behind a computer screen. That can be a distraction to a child or to a spouse who wants my attention. That can be distracting for people who come in who want to visit that has something to say, but my attention is everywhere. And I can't really give focus to them when I'm focused on something else. Let's say a marriage that is rocky, and you have friends that continues to talk in your ear. You have the television that continues to put ideas in your head. You have people on the outside looking in that always wants to give you advice. There's too many distractions. Maybe you have a relationship and you're stepping out. That's a distraction. Maybe the kids just really need one-on-one time with you, but you're always including someone else. That's a distraction. So we have to reduce and eliminate the distractions in order to make the relationships better. And it's hard to do sometimes. There's many times I see families who are supposed to be out with this family outing, and instead of the mother or the father being attentive to their child, they're on this little thing right here. This little thing right here, their faces are in the devices, and no attention toward the family time, which is what they're supposed to be doing anyway. Those are distractions. So we have to eliminate, reduce, and minimize these distractions that are impacting our relationships in negative ways. So, number one, consider yourself. Number two, give yourself grace. Number three, be willing to talk about the hard truths. Number four, eliminate distractions. And number five, do the little things. As easy as that seems, sometimes that's the most difficult for us to do the little things. Remember those little things that we used to do that really made a big difference in our relationships and how we interact with one another in the relationships? Those little things could be something as simple as saying a kind word, saying I appreciate you, saying that I love you, maybe a touch on the shoulder, maybe a little treat or a little snack sit up on my boss's desk when she returns to the office from a hard day. Those little things make the biggest difference. Truth be told, it's those little things that we neglect to do that put the most strain on the relationships. When was the last time you told your husband that he's handsome? When was the last time you told your wife that she's beautiful? When was the last time that you told your children that you're proud of them? When was the last time you sent somebody a gift just because, or a kind message just because, not expecting anything in return? When was the last time you did something out of the norm? Maybe cooked a meal that was unexpected. Maybe treated someone out to dinner that was unexpected. Maybe sent a flower or some kind of kind gesture to a coworker that was going through a difficult time. It's the little things. Those little things we must be reminded of. Those little things that sometimes we even desire for ourselves. We can go and do that for someone else and get just as much gratification from it as someone given to us. Because it is something about giving, it's something about sharing that creates a sense of happiness within us, a sense of value, a sense of worth, to know that we did something that made a difference in someone else's life. So if you want to create better relationships, it's all about what it is that we do. What are we doing? because we can't change the dynamics in the relationships without first looking within ourselves and evaluating what are we doing to make it better? What are we doing to create a different atmosphere? And it's in the little things. So if you're in a place right now to where you're struggling in a relationship, think about the little things that you used to do that used to bring those smiles. Maybe, just maybe, the secret to making that relationship better is hidden in the little things that you no longer do. Number 6, focus on the positive. We have enough negativity going around. And like I said earlier, things are not always going to be perfect. We're not always going to do the right things. We're not always going to say the right things. But one place we can start is to focus on the positive. If I look at my job, because that's the example I gave you, if I look at my job, for instance, can I find something positive in that atmosphere that I could focus on? And sure, I can. One of the things that I can focus on that's positive is that I can come into a room and the whole atmosphere begins to shift with my smile and my greetings every morning. So that's a positive. I can focus on the fact that my children showed up, and I don't know what's going on in their lives, but I know with them getting up every morning and showing up to class, I can make the difference in their lives. Another positive thing, I know that if I can show up day in and day out, at the end of the month, there's going to be a reward for me in the forms of a paycheck that pays me a wage where I can have a adequate lifestyle. It affords me health insurance. It affords me a retirement plan. And so those are positive things that I can begin to focus on and think about. So what about you in relationships, and maybe things haven't been the best between you and your spouse? Maybe someone's stepping out on relationships. Maybe the children are all out of control, and maybe you feel like you're at the edge and you just want to give up. What kind of positive things can come out of that? Does your spouse show up at home at night? Whether it's 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, man, I'm just glad you made it home safe. It's good to see your face. I just want you to know that I appreciate everything you do. What about those children who maybe have stepped out on the wrong track, just trying to figure out their lives for themselves? Maybe they're struggling. Hey, I just want you to know that I'm proud of you and that I love you. I appreciate you coming home. I appreciate you calling me, letting me know that you're okay. It's the little things, focusing on the positive things that is going to not only change our emotional reactions, but it's also going to begin to shift our mindsets and our focus so that we're not so overwhelmed by all the negative things. Those positive things will begin to drown those negative thoughts and those negative reactions away. So focusing on the positive is a good way to start in creating better relationships. So as I'm getting ready to give you tip number 7, I just want to go back and recap the other steps as we're wrapping up today. So 7 tips to create better relationships. Number 1, consider yourself. Number 2, give yourself grace. Number 3, be willing to talk about the hard truths. Number 4, eliminate distractions. 5, do the little things. 6, focus on the positive. And last but not least, number 7, give it 100%. if you want to reap 100% of the rewards and the gratification, you must be willing to give 100% in every relationship that you set out to accomplish. Nothing less, nothing less than 100. 99 and a half will not do. You must give 100%. What does that 100% look like to you? I'd like to hear your comments on this segment today as I share with you my 7 tips to creating better relationships. What are your thoughts? What have you tried? What has worked for you? Uh, what tip do you have that you may want to share with me that I can come out here and share with the listeners as well here on the Woman to Woman set? Send me your thoughts to thewomantowomanpodcast at gmail.com. Again, that's thewomantowomanpodcast at gmail.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts. In the meantime, while you're listening, don't forget to like, share, follow, download, and subscribe, and connect with me, not only here on the Woman to Woman podcast, but on other platforms that I have by visiting my Linktree at Linktree/Anntricia Bray Smith. Again, that's Linktree/Anntricia Bray Smith. Until next time, I am your host, Anntricia Bray Smith, your professional mentor and speaker.